I am always amazed at the beautiful names given to Chinese and Japanese children. Rengetsu was no exception, as it is translated as Lotus Moon, which conjures up some lovely images. Otagaki Rengetsu was born in the pleasure quarters of Kyoto, Japan in 1791 AD. She was the illegitimate daughter of a young geisha and a samurai. Her father had her adopted by a lay priest, Otagaki Teruhisa, and she was taken to the Chienji temple, which belonged to the Pure Land sect of Buddhism. This form of Mahayana Buddhism focuses upon Amitabha, or the Buddha of infinite light, and enlightenment through devotion to this deity. Teruhisa taught Rengetsu martial arts, literature, calligraphy, and the game of Go. When she was 7 or 8, she served as an attendant in the castle of the Lord of Kamioka, near to Kyoto. At the castle she continued her education and became proficient in martial arts, poetry and calligraphy. She also learned to practice the tea ceremony and also how to dance. Rengetsu was said to be very beautiful and had many suitors as she grew older. In 1807, when she was 16, she returned to Chienji and very shortly afterwards married. Up to now, she had had an almost idyllic life, but that was soon to end. Her first child died within a month of its birth, and her second child lived for only 3 years. Her third died in infancy. She separated from her husband, who was living a dissolute life, and he too died shortly afterwards. She later married again, and this time all seemed to go well for a while, but then her husband became ill while she was pregnant with her second child, and he died as a result of this illness. Rengetsu was now 33 years old and decided to follow a religious life, taking her 2 children to live in hermitage in the grounds of Chienji. By the time she was 41, her remaining children and Teruhisa had passed away, and she was alone. After Teruhisa died, she had to leave the hermitage and then decide what she was going to do next in her life. She even considered teaching the game of Go, but realised that men would not take too kindly to being taught by a woman. She also considered teaching poetry for a while, but eventually abandoned that idea, although she became very well known for her poems. She wrote a very poignant poem about the loss of her children, which goes, "My children, I used to stroke their sleepy morning hair, laying loose upon my sleeve, white dew on blossoms of pink." What she settled on eventually was pottery. She moved to a suburb of Kyoto and obtained clay for her pots from the Kagura hills and used various kilns to fire them. She inscribed the pots with her own poems and paintings. Rengetsu must have found some solace from her tragic life in her artwork. She became very much in demand for her pottery, so much that she had to move from place to place to avoid being overwhelmed by customers. In 1 year alone, she moved a total of 13 times. Rengetsu described herself as a drifting cloud blown by a fierce wind. Many Zen teachers, aware of the transience of life, describe themselves in a similar way. Despite starting life in a Pure Land temple, she studied and practiced Zen and esoteric Buddhism, integrating all 3 into her life. In fact, her whole life is a lesson for us all as to how to turn tragedy into positivity, and how the power of the Spirit can come to our aid in difficult times if we only open ourselves to it and allow it to guide us. She was also very compassionate and raised money for disaster victims, as well as more than once giving her outer kimono to beggars she met on the street. When a thief entered her hut, she held a light up for him to see better, and even gave him some tea rice to send him on his way. She told him that she had nothing of value, but he could take whatever he needed. When a rival kiln blatantly turned out copies of her work, they had the audacity to ask her to inscribe them, because they could produce the pottery, but not her calligraphy. She agreed to do this, and also gave them some genuine pieces so they could make better copies. She helped struggling artists by inscribing her poems on their work, thereby making them much more saleable. Her poetry took the form of waka, which has a form of 5-7-5-7-7 syllables, and she believed in the direct and unembellished expression of her feelings. Like most Chinese and Japanese poetry, they are meant to evoke certain emotions on many levels. These may be related to our own experiences. Rather than filling our minds with images from the poem, they allow us to fill the spaces with our own. This is an example. The blossoms have fallen. The fetters of my heart have also loosened, and it has become summer. A rivulet murmurs loud and clear. Rengetsu supported the Emperor and the Meiji Restoration in 1868, and Japan became more open to communication with other countries. It brought the downfall of the Tokugawa shogunate. The word Meiji means enlightened rule, and the goal was to combine modern advances with traditional Eastern values. This led to Japan adopting more Western ideas. Whether this was beneficial or not depends on one's viewpoint. H.P. Blavatsky has rather strong views on this. Writing about true lovers of art in an article, Civilization, the Death of Art and Beauty, she writes, "Why do they not organise and send out missionaries the world over to tell picturesque Japan and other countries ready to fall victims that to imitate the will of the wisp of European culture and fascination means for a non-Christian land the committing of suicide, that it means sacrificing one's individuality for an empty show and shadow. At best, it is to exchange the original and the picturesque for the vulgar and the hideous." Rather strong words there from H.P. Blavatsky. As said, Rengetsu supported the Emperor Meiji, but deplored the violence that took place during the transition. She wrote, "To those who strike and those who are struck, keep this in your hearts. Are we not all people of the same wonderful land?" In these times, I find those words incredibly moving. We should learn from them. Rengetsu passed from this world on December 10th, 1875, peacefully at the age of 84, in the tea room of the Jinkoin Temple.